Relationships are all about give and take. Um, if you are in a relationship, that was a joke because I know you're not. Anyway, if you are in a relationship, you need to learn how to give and take. What that means is you give qualities, you give aspects, you give time, energy, money, whatever it takes. You give stuff to the relationship, and in return, you are allowed to take from your partner or significant other or whoever, yourself, maybe if you're in a relationship with yourself. So it's a give and take. You give and then you receive. That is what makes a good relationship. Now, speaking of give and take, I want to talk about smoking. More specifically, like the smoking kills, quit smoking ad campaigns. They really, I remember as a kid, I think my generation probably was the one that they hit the hardest with the no smoking. I guess for my generation, it'd be no vaping. Here's the problem with that. In my opinion, this is going to sound really weird. In my opinion, they should encourage, not encourage smoking. They should encourage not smoking. That's not what I want to say either. They should, so first of all, they should just say, hey, you shouldn't do anything. You shouldn't drink. You shouldn't smoke. You shouldn't do drugs. You shouldn't vape. You shouldn't, do anything. You shouldn't do anything. But if you're going to, you should do these things. You should drink, you should smoke, you should do this. Because the problem is, and I know that this is first world experience, not first world, first person experience. I know kids who in middle school, I would do the DARE program with, the don't do drugs kids thing, the lion. And I remember them saying, oh, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do this stuff. They showed like pictures of people's livers and people's pictures, like smokers' lungs and hearts and stuff. Those same kids today are doing like Molly and DMT and like super hard drugs. Like I think one did heroin, another one, I know people who are just casually doing fentanyl, like the pills, the blue pills. This is the problem. If you tell people not to do something, they're going to do it anyway, and they're going to one up you just to get back at you, just in spite. So if you tell someone, hey, don't smoke, it's bad for you, they'll say, okay, I won't smoke. I'm going to do crack instead. That's not good. You should say, here's the dangers for smoking. Here's the dangers for drinking. Here's the dangers for crack. Here's the dangers for heroin. Here's the dangers for fentanyl. Here's the dangers for every drug, every substance, everywhere. And then this is why you shouldn't take them. You just need to educate people on what the dangers are. You shouldn't say, don't do A or don't do B. Because let's think of it this way. I would rather have my kids smoke cigarettes at age 19 than be doing like Molly in the bathroom at the school at age 19. Does that make sense? This is what I was saying earlier. It's a give and take relationship. You got to find compromise, people. You know, I don't want my son drinking underage, but I would love to have my son drinking underage at a party if he was offered cocaine or offered fentanyl or something. Sure, son, if you're offered fentanyl at a party, go have a beer. Go have a beer. If you don't want to feel left out, go have a beer. It's a give and take, ladies and gentlemen. It's a give and take. That is the most important thing. You know, you have to keep in mind, you have to fight your battles. If you try to just, because kids aren't going to stop. Kids aren't going to stop. You tell them not to stop smoking, they smoke more, or they find alternatives, dangerous, horrible alternatives. So you have to just take your loss sometimes. It's all about compromise. That's the purpose of this video, to educate the parents of young kids, or even like teenagers, not yet necessarily young kids. But you got to choose what's important. Okay. You got to choose what's important to you. Do you care about your child's like well-being, or do you care more about like the status quo? Meaning, like, do you care more about zero tolerance policy for this kind of stuff. Because oftentimes, if you have a zero tolerance policy for stuff when it comes to your kids, they'll still do it, but they just won't be open to you about it. And that's an issue. You know, you don't want your kids sneaking off in the middle of the night to go to parties they shouldn't be at, doing things at other people's houses when you're not around. You know, that's not a healthy relationship. And then that's when they could get into some actual trouble. You know, when you hear the sad stories about like high school kids overdosing and the parents had no idea that they were even into that stuff. They were even taking that stuff. They were even going to those kinds of parties. So you need to have a flexible policy on that stuff. I'm not saying you need to encourage it because you shouldn't encourage it. But you need to explain to them the risks. And if they are just absolutely hell bent on breaking the laws, there are minor ways to do that. You know, if little Timmy wants to pop some blue pills, go buy him a pack of cigarettes, you know, tide him over. And then when he turns 21, he can go move to Portland and just sleep on the sidewalk. Or I shouldn't say sleep, I should say stand up and sleep on the sidewalk like a zombie, the Fent zombies. So think on that. I'm not a parent yet, but I'm pretty good at giving parental advice. So please reach out to me if you want any more. If you want me to come over to your house and give like one-on-one therapy, I can do that as well. Um, or you could just buy a pack of cigarettes a lot cheaper. So I appreciate you listening to this, and I will see you tomorrow.